Tonight, we listen to the silence beneath the helmet of an American soldier. You see the image, the camouflage, the posture, the rifle. You see the outcome of power. But you rarely hear the mechanism, the thought process that turns a person into a professional tasked with the preservation of order in the places where order has collapsed. This is not a story about aggression. It's a story about endurance, about vigilance. It is defined not by glory, but by 1,000 untold sacrifices made with meticulous, almost clinical precision. When the world fractures, someone has to stand in the gap. Someone has to carry the weight of responsibility for the things that cannot be unseen, the orders that cannot be reversed, and the lives that depend on two specific things: preparation and resolve. This is the story of the quiet professional, the shield forged in duty, determined to hold the line, no matter the cost. His commitment is the integrity of the mission. His reward is the survival of the men next to him. This is the journey of the reluctant shield. I was never chasing a legacy. I didn't join for the parades or the romance of history. I joined because the civilian world, with its noise and its lack of hard edges, felt untethered. I sought structure. I sought a place where purpose was measurable and failure had a high, quantifiable price. For me, the recruitment office wasn't a hero's gateway. It was a transaction. I exchanged my personal freedom, my civilian comforts, for a global responsibility. I wanted to be a solution, a mechanism of competence in a world that often lacked it. The moment you raise your hand and take that oath, you step onto a conveyor belt of transformation. They don't train you to be tough. They train you to be unfailingly competent. My early struggles weren't physical, though the physicality was brutal. The struggle was cognitive. It was the resistance to relinquishing individual ego in favor of systemic precision. You spend 20 years being told to think for yourself. In the military, you're taught that sometimes the only thing that matters is thinking for the team. We were taught that the foundation of American power wasn't a bomb or a bullet, but the meticulously documented process. The ability to repeat a complex task flawlessly under conditions designed to break the mind. They didn't just give us rifles. They gave us instruments of defense, and we had to master their physics. The weight, the balance, the breathing technique wasn't about violence. It was about precision. A rifle is an extension of the oath you swore, and its operation must reflect the integrity of that oath. We learned to move together, not as individuals, but as interlocking components of a machine. My breathing had to match the stride of the man in front of me. My scan of the perimeter had to compensate for the blind spot of the man behind me. The brotherhood that forms in training is not sentimental. It is a profound, life and death mutual dependency rooted in trust. It is the trust that the man next to you will not just try to do his job, but that he will perform it with unfailing competence when the world around you is turning to fire and dust. The drill sergeants were surgical in their cruelty. They weren't trying to make us angry. They were trying to isolate the point of failure and eliminate it. They taught us that when the mind gets tired, the training takes over. Every drill, every run, every lecture was calculated to achieve a decisive advantage on a battlefield we hadn't yet seen. We weren't just soldiers. We were being trained as highly effective systems operators. We were taught to prioritize the mission objective above all else, because the mission itself was the promise we were making to the rest of the world. And in that dust and sweat, you learn the core truth. The standard of excellence is the only thing that saves lives. Every piece of gear, every movement was calculated. The purpose was heavier than the weight of the world. We were ready. We were trained. Now we just needed a map, a mission, and a destination. The next chapter was the ultimate test of that competence. The journey to the sandbox. The day you leave is marked by a strange kind of calm. You spend months preparing for chaos, and the last morning is meticulously scheduled. Final briefing, gear check, accountability. Everything is a system designed to prevent the human element from overriding the necessary discipline. The goodbye. That was the hardest operation. You rehearse the words in your head, trying to make the final phone call brief, professional, and yet somehow adequate. You know your loved ones see a hero, but you see yourself as a tool, and you are terrified of failing to be sharp enough. You learn to control the tremor in your voice, to keep the goodbye focused on the future, not the present separation. Stepping onto the C-17 is stepping into a transitional space. It's an aluminum cocoon, pressurized and loud, yet profoundly isolating. The smell of jet fuel, new nylon, and old coffee. 100 men strapped in, shoulder to shoulder, each one running internal. Diagnostics. The silence inside that fuselage was a different kind of loud. It was the sound of 100 minds running systems checks. No one spoke of fear. We spoke of gear. We reviewed the schematics of the armored vehicles waiting for us. We confirmed the loadout of our magazines. We repeated the key intelligence points, not as conversation, but as a final, shared mental rehearsal. The flight is long. You watch the sun track across the wing, marking the steady erosion of familiarity. As the hours turn into distance, the world you left behind shrinks, and the gravity of the one you are heading toward begins to take hold. Every minute brings the oath closer to the moment of truth. When the signal was given, the atmosphere changed instantly. The engine pitch deepened. The crew chief barked the preparation sequence. We cinched our vests, checked our weapons one last time, and locked eyes. Then, the final, shuddering descent. The aircraft banks hard, dropping through air that feels thick and dry. The moment the ramp begins to drop, the noise is overwhelming. Not just the engine, but the sudden, raw sound of the environment. You step on a foreign earth, and the smell hits you. Dust, diesel, scorching metal, and a strange, distant scent of smoke. The heat is immediate, physical, and suffocating. There is no time for awe. There is no time for feeling. The job begins immediately. You are moving off the tarmac, into the security perimeter. The weight of a uniform became the weight of immediate professional obligation. The complex geopolitical reality is no longer a briefing slide. It is the landscape in front of you. You're no longer a person. You are a component. You are the system. And the system has just gone live. The next sound we heard was the voice of the commander laying out the first mission. We had arrived. The reluctant shield was deployed. Our first mission was standard, a security patrol through a sector we needed to validate as clear for a logistics convoy. It sounds mundane, but in that environment, mundane is just the long stretch of time before the unpredictable happens. We moved in a staggered file, the heat already punishing even before mid-morning. The challenge wasn't just the geography, it was the visual ambiguity. Every vehicle, every pile of debris, every figure moving in the distance could be nothing, or it could be the threat. You learn to filter out the noise, the heat haze, the local traffic, and focus only on the anomalies. Your eyes become data processors, not just observers. We had the full spectrum of surveillance watching us, but ultimately, the immediate security rested on the 6 highly trained professionals walking the ground. We were the last layer of sensor, the final verification point. We were nearing a stretch of high-walled compounds when the air fractured. It wasn't a slow build. It was an instantaneous, high-volume eruption. Small arms fire, too concentrated, too organized. Ambush. The protocol took over immediately. There was no panic, only the flawless cascade of team response. Before the second round could land, the point man was already down, taking cover behind a low embankment, laying down immediate, sustained suppressive fire. Every man was already moving to his pre-assigned position of defense and counterattack. The radio traffic was instant and concise. Contact, 3 o'clock high. Egress blocked. Establishing base of fire. I moved to cover, my body hitting the dirt before my brain registered the command. The sound was deafening, but my focus narrowed to a tiny, manageable tunnel. I wasn't hearing the gunfire. I was counting the rounds, calculating the enemy's position based on the angle of impact and the muzzle flash. This is where the training pays for itself. We were already talking to the intelligence overlay. Our team leader was not just reaction. He was coordinating resources. Check 6. We need confirmation on the high-threat building. Grid coordinates Bravo, 7, Delta. Do we have a drone on station? Within seconds, the response was back. not from man on the ground, but from thousands of miles away, integrated into the system, confirming multiple signatures in Grid Bravo 7 Delta. Elevated threat confirmed. Stand by for targeting assistance. The tactical advantage we possess is overwhelming. It is the ability to change the perspective of the battlefield in an instant. While we were focused on the threat directly in front of us, the unblinking eye of our surveillance systems had already assessed the flanking positions, tracked their escape routes, and predicted their next move. We returned fire, but not blindly. It was controlled, disciplined volleys intended to pin the enemy down, buying time for the decisive strategy. Our grenadier deployed smoke, masking our counter-movement. This was the solution. A two-man team, myself and a teammate, had to breach a low compound wall and execute a flanking maneuver that would put us on the enemy's side. It was high risk, but the data confirmed it was the only way to break the line without significant casualties. As we moved low and fast, the sky thundered. But it wasn't the sweeping, chaotic sound of old war movies. It was the surgical scream of precision. A U.S. aircraft, it could have been an A-10 or a drone, had arrived. It wasn't laying down a carpet of fire. It was putting ordnance in a specific window of a specific building confirmed by 3 different layers of intelligence. Power delivered with surgical intent. The battlefield shifted instantly. The focused enemy fire vanished, replaced by confusion and retreat. The discipline of the enemy broke the moment they realized they weren't fighting 6 men in the dirt. They were fighting the entire, interconnected defensive architecture of the United States. We secure the position, our heart rates still high, but our movements already back to methodical. We didn't cheer, we assessed. We checked our wounded, accounted for our rounds, and documented every detail of the contact for the after-action review. The system worked. Precision and technology had turned chaos into controlled advantage. The reluctant shield had held the line. But the moment the adrenaline faded, the immense physical exhaustion of maintaining that level of competence set in. We gathered our gear, reset the patrol formation, and prepared for the long, quiet walk back. The only thing left was the silence, heavier and more telling than the gunfire had been. The hour after an engagement is often harder than the firefight itself. The adrenaline is burning off, leaving behind a residue of physical exhaustion and mental clarity. We were back on the forward operating base, scrubbing the dust and the cordite from our gear, reviewing the telemetry, and confirming the casualty counts. In that downtime, the brotherhood wasn't about shared beer or loud camaraderie. It was about the unspoken contract, the professional vow made between men who depend on each other for survival. The trust we had was absolute. It wasn't based on how much we liked each other. It was based on knowing the other soldier will not fail their task. When I turned my back to pull security, I knew the man behind me had his sector covered with the same meticulous commitment I had of mine. He wasn't just my friend. He was my technical insurance policy against death. That shared, dangerous expertise formed a bond deeper than any civilian friendship could ever achieve. We talked briefly about home, not about the big events, but the small, anchoring details, the way the light hits the kitchen counter in the morning, the impossibility of trying to fix a leaky faucet from 7,000 miles away. These small fragments of normalcy were shared, almost therapeutically, as a way to remind ourselves what we were professionals fighting to protect. But mostly we talked systems. We broke down the ambush from Chapter 3. Why did the thermal signature on the flank only appear after the second volley? Should we have used more smoke to mask the cross? This critical self-assessment is key to the professional military culture. The focus is always on process improvement. Did the system perform optimally? Where was the lag? The weight of responsibility is too high to accept failure, and certainly too high to accept complacency. There is an unspoken rule in command. The ultimate responsibility is to bring everyone back alive, mission success notwithstanding. That is the vow of leadership. It's a terrifying obligation, a constant, heavy pressure that demands you be right every single time. It means you prioritize the well-being of the team over your own personal safety or comfort. In that desert, under the endless, heavy sky, we were bound by more than rank. We were bound by that shared commitment to the mission's integrity and the mutual guarantee of competence. Every man was an extension of the system, and that system worked because the human commitment was absolute. This trust, this shared, dangerous expertise, was the foundation of survival. It was the only currency that truly mattered. Night shifts are where the illusion of distance vanishes. During the day, the light gives you a horizon and a sense of scale. At night, everything is compressed and visceral. The world becomes a study in shadows and silence. Our mission was a silent infiltration, secure intelligence from a high-value, abandoned structure on the outskirts of a key village. It required total discretion. The objective wasn't to engage, but to enter, extract, and vanish without leaving a trace or alerting the latent threat. The gear is what makes the night possible. Our high-tech NVGs filtered the moon and star light into a silent, pale green reality. Every man was wrapped in specialized equipment designed to eliminate noise and thermal signature. The smallest detail, a loose buckle, a rattling piece of metal, could compromise the entire operation. We moved like ghosts, testing every foot placement, calculating every lean and shift of weight. This was the true weight of the green. The silent expertise of a highly trained team, moving without trace, analyzing without assumption. The movement across the terrain was a complex ballet of physics and paranoia. You rely entirely on your partner's disciplined pace and the precise data flowing across your display. The technology is seamless. GPS markers update every second. Threat overlays flash red in your peripheral vision. Every whisper on the comms is a vital piece of communication, translated into immediate action. As we neared the target structure, the tension was a physical pressure in the chest. We established the perimeter. 2 men positioned themselves for overwatch, and the breach team, myself included, prepared the final approach. We were operating on the cutting edge of global intelligence, using U.S. training excellence to achieve strategic goals that protected assets thousands of miles away. Night shifts are where the illusion of distance vanishes. During the day, the light gives you a horizon and a sense of scale. At night, everything is compressed and visceral. The world becomes a study in shadows and silence. Our mission was a silent infiltration, secure intelligence from a high-value, abandoned structure on the outskirts of a key village. It required total discretion. The objective wasn't to engage, but to enter, extract, and vanish without leaving a trace or alerting the latent threat. The gear is what makes the night possible. Our high-tech NVGs filtered the moon and star light into a silent, pale green reality. Every man was wrapped in specialized equipment designed to eliminate noise and thermal signature. The smallest detail, a loose buckle, a rattling piece of metal, could compromise the entire operation. We moved like ghosts, testing every foot placement, calculating every lean and shift of weight. This was the true weight of the green. The silent expertise of a highly trained team, moving without trace, analyzing without assumption. The movement across the terrain was a complex ballet of physics and paranoia. You rely entirely on your partner's disciplined pace and the precise data flowing across your display. The technology is seamless. GPS markers update every second. Threat overlays flash red in your peripheral vision. Every whisper on the comms is a vital piece of communication, translated into immediate action. As we neared the target structure, the tension was a physical pressure in the chest. We established the perimeter. 2 men positioned themselves for overwatch, and the breach team, myself included, prepared the final approach. We were operating on the cutting edge of global intelligence, using U.S. training excellence to achieve strategic goals that protected assets thousands of miles away. The human mind is designed for linear morality, right and wrong, good and evil. The battlefield is not. It is a gradient of gray, where every decision, even the professionally correct one, carries a toll. Sometimes the hardest part of the job wasn't the engagement, but the quiet after the engagement. The heavy silence that felt filled with unknowns and unresolved questions. We operated on policy, on defined targets, and on clear rules of engagement. But out here, you face the moral ambiguity of the conflict daily. You see the consequences of our necessary actions on populations that are caught in the crossfire. You see the blurred distinction between threat and civilian. And in the moments before sleep, when the professional controls are lowered, you question the personal cost. A simple detail would trigger it. A child's toy found in the debris of a compound you just secured. A fleeting memory of simple conversation with your spouse that suddenly feels impossibly distant. The sacrifice is immediate and ongoing. You are sacrificing your clarity for complexity. You are sacrificing your comfort for constant vigilance. This feeling isn't cowardice. It's the sheer exhaustion of maintaining your moral bearings while performing the hard, necessary work of security. For a moment, you long for simplicity. You long for the world where the choices are clean and the mission has a definitive, uncomplicated end. But that doubt, that sense of being overwhelmed, cannot be allowed to take root. It is a luxury a soldier, especially a leader, cannot afford. When the doubt arrived, I didn't seek external validation. I didn't look for the flag or the abstract idea of freedom. I looked down at my hands and my weapon and at the man sleeping soundly in the bunk next to me. He was sleeping soundly because he trusted my ability to hold the perimeter. My truth, my stability, was the integrity of the immediate mission. My purpose wasn't a lofty political goal. It was the vow to my team. The weight was heavy, but the purpose, the professional commitment to those 6 men, was heavier. That certainty was my anchor. I reset my mind, locked the doubt away, and prepared the gear for the next shift. The shield had to remain functional. A deployment is defined by its crises. The moment where the standard protocol fails and pure, adaptive leadership is required. It happened 3 weeks before our rotation was complete. Not an ambush, but a concerted, complex assault on our primary communications hub, the artery that connected our entire sector to global intelligence and air support. If it went down, we were blind, deaf, and alone. The alarm was not a sudden burst, but a rapid, escalating series of fault indicators. The signals were precise, and they confirmed a sophisticated attack designed to overwhelm our digital and physical defenses simultaneously. The immediate threat was not just the enemy ground force, it was the clock. We had minutes to shore up the perimeter before the breach. I was at the command post when the reports flooded in. The noise was immense, but the key to leadership under fire is to synthesize information rapidly and ignore the emotional static. I took the mic. My voice was calm, cutting through the chaos. I didn't shout commands. I dictated solutions derived from thousands of hours of training. Alpha Team, execute contingency Omega 7. Fix the breach point. Bravo, redirect all assets to perimeter sector Charlie. I need real-time satellite telemetry on the western approach, now. The training wasn't designed to tell me what to do, but to teach me how to process variables. We were under fire from 3 directions, but the decisive point was the communication antenna itself. We had to hold that objective. I led a small reaction force, moving into the kill zone to reinforce the closest defensive posture. This wasn't bravado, it was necessary risk. I was the one with the highest level of systemic understanding. I needed to be where the data was most chaotic, synthesizing the field reports with the satellite feeds in real time. This is where the power of cross-branch coordination became evident. I was talking to my ground team, who were engaging enemies 30 feet away, while simultaneously relaying targeting data to an Air Force asset miles overhead, who was providing close air support on a coordinate I dictated. The coordination wasn't just fast, it was flawless. When the breach happened, I didn't rely on luck. I relied on the mathematical certainty of our training. A group of enemy fighters breached the wall. We were outnumbered, but we were organized. I directed fire, prioritized targets, and called in our specialized vehicles to create an impenetrable defensive position. Every man moved with the focused violence of action demanded by the moment. Then, the final decisive moment. Just as our ammunition was reaching its critical limit, the radio crackled with a new voice. Reinforcements. They didn't just arrive. They integrated seamlessly into the existing defensive posture. U.S. Marines, responding from a distant FOB, moving into the sector exactly where the defensive lines were thinnest. They weren't heroes riding to the rescue. They were professionals executing the same shared doctrine. The enemy, facing a surge of disciplined force and coordinated fire that materialized with surgical precision, broke and retreated. The solution wasn't a miracle. It was the flawless execution of a contingency plan backed by unmatched resources. I looked at the young Marine leader standing next to me, covered in sweat and dust. We exchanged a brief nod, a silent acknowledgement of the shared commitment. We had preserved the infrastructure. We had saved lives. The battle was over. The reluctant shield had held. I remember my oath to the mission and the promise of the team. No one fails the team. The final flight is the quietest leg of the entire journey. There is no urgency, only the slow, internal process of decompression. The high alert switch, which has been locked in on position for months, begins the slow, painful process of clicking back to standby. You look around the cabin at the faces of your teammates. The exhaustion is profound, but beneath it is a shared, unspoken satisfaction. We executed the mission. We saw it through. The transition from warrior to civilian begins 30,000 feet in the air. You start to think about things other than threat geometry, ammunition counts, and perimeter integrity. You think about traffic lights, soft beds, and the simple luxury of a choice. The return is not a victory parade. It is a profound, personal relief. When the aircraft lands on American soil, the shift is instantaneous. The air is cleaner, the light is different, and the sheer volume of ordinary life is overwhelming. The reunion is often the hardest part to process. The embrace is physical and overwhelming, but the communication is complicated. They see the person they missed. You feel the person you became. You realize there are things you experienced, things you know, that can never be adequately explained or shared. The bond remains with the men who were with you in the dust. There is deep gratitude, yes. The soldier feels the respect of the community, but he doesn't seek the fanfare. The true validation isn't the applause. It's the quiet understanding that the job was done with integrity. The gear is put away. The uniforms are cleaned and pressed. The mind, however, does not simply power down. You take the lessons, the discipline, the analytical thought process, the commitment to vigilance, and you integrate them into the next phase of life. The service never truly ends. The reluctant shield has simply rotated to standby, ready to deploy the expertise gained, whether in uniform or in the quiet dedication of a responsible, productive citizen. We have followed the journey of one American soldier, one man defined not by his appearance, but by his unwavering professional competence and ethical duty. He is a product of a system that demands excellence, a system that turns fear into focus and complexity into clear, decisive action. Heroes are not born. They are forged through discipline, through commitment, through the relentless pursuit of mission integrity. The American soldier understands the cost of chaos. He understands that freedom is not an inherent right, but a condition that must be guarded, defended, and maintained by those willing to stand the watch. Their dedication secures the present. Their resilience safeguards the future. And as long as the mission demands clarity, precision, and sacrifice, the American soldier will be ready. He is the professional guardian. He is the quiet strength. He is the reluctant shield.